Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Gopinath, Radha Gopinath, Shri Radhe. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Guru Deva, Jaya Guru Deva, Jaya Guru Deva, Jaya Guru Deva. Nitya Lila Pravishta Om Vishnupada Paramahansa Parivraj Kacharya Shtotra Shada Shri Srimad Bhaya Charanaravinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Nitya Lila Pravishta Om Vishnupada Paramahansa Parivraj Kacharya Shtotra Shada Shri Srimad Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Nitya Lila Pravishta Om Vishnupada Srila Gorkishore Das Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai. Nitya Lila Pravishta Om Vishnupada Srila Satchidananda Bhaktivinoda Thakur Ki Jai. Nitya Lila Pravishta Om Vishnupada Vaishnava Sarvabhaum Srila Jagannathas Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai. Shri Gauriya Vaishnav Guru Varga Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem se kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Ganga Mai Ki Jai. Jamuna Mai Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Tulsi Devi Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnav Vrinda Ki Jai. Nitai Gaura Premanande. Hari Hari Bol. All glory assembled devotees Hare Krishna. All glory assembled devotees Hare Krishna. All glory assembled devotees Hare Krishna. All glory to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. All glory to Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pastaya Putale Srimati Radha Govinda Kasanti Namini Namaste Prabhupada Devam Gauravani Pita Namani Kramya Jana Nishtarini. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So reading today from Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 3, Text 8. Asamuhurta ekasmin nanagareshu yoshitam savidham jagrihe panin Anurupa svamayaya Asam muhurta ekasmin Nanagareshu yoshitam Savidham jagrihe panin Anurupa svamayaya Asam muhurta ekasmin Nanagareshu yoshitam Savidham jagrihe panin Anurupa svamayaya Asam muhurta ekasmin Nanagareshu yoshitam Savidham jagrihe panin Anurupa svamayaya Asam muhurta ekasmin Nanagareshu yoshitam Savidham jagrihe panin Anurupa svamayaya Asamuhurta ekasmin Nanagareshu yoshitam Savidham jagrihe panin Anurupa svamayaya Mataji's Asamuhurta ekasmin Nanagareshu yoshitam Savidham jagrihe panin Anurupa svamayaya Ansamuhurta ekasmin Nanagareshu yoshitam Savidham jagrihe panin Anurupa svamayaya Asam, all those. Muhurte, at one time. Ekasmin, simultaneously. Nana agareshu, in different compartments. Yoshitam, of the women. Savidham, with perfect rituals. Jagrihe, accepted. Panin, hands. Anurupaha, exactly to match. Svamayaya, by his internal potency. Translation. All those princesses were lodged in different apartments, and the Lord simultaneously assumed different bodily expansions, exactly matching each and every princess. He accepted their hands in perfect rituals by his internal potency. Purport. In the Brahma Samhita, chapter 5, text 33, the Lord is described as follows in regard to his innumerable plenary expansions. Advaitam achyutam anadim anantarupam adyam purana purusham navayovanam cha vedesho durlabha adurlabham atma bhaktao govindam adi purusham tamaham bhajami. The Lord, Govinda, whom I worship, is the original personality of Godhead. He is none different from his innumerable plenary expansions, who are all infallible, original, and unlimited, and who have eternal forms. Although he is primeval, the oldest personality, he is always fresh and young. By his internal potency, the Lord can expand himself into various personalities of Swayam Prakasha, and again into Prabhava and Vaibhava forms, and all of them are non-different from one another. The forms into which the Lord expanded to marry the princesses in different apartments were all slightly different, just to match each and every one of them. They are called Vaibhava Vilasa forms of the Lord and are affected by his internal potency, Yoga Maya. And again, the translation. All those princesses were lodged in different apartments, and the Lord simultaneously assumed different bodily expansions, exactly matching each and every princess. He accepted their hands in perfect rituals by his internal potency. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Om Jnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupah Kadamahyam Dadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gauratvishe Namaha Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Eva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hello and welcome to Srimad Bhagavatam class. Whenever I'm reading Prabhupada's books and I read any mention of Vaibhava and Prabhava expansions, I first remember the first time I read teachings of Lord Chaitanya, and I was just so confused in that chapter with the whole list. It was, of course, in Chaitanya Charitamrita, the chapter that Prabhupada is summarizing. That goes in lots of depth. When you read it in Chaitanya Charitamrita, you've got the word for word, you've got all these purports, you kind of get what's going on. But in teachings of Lord Chaitanya, Prabhupada, he compacts it so wonderfully and so efficiently. I still remember getting so lost in the lists. And then I remember being completely confused about all of these different expansions and all. I looked it up in Vedabase and I found one morning walk. And one of Srila Prabhupada's disciples, they're obviously on the morning walk, and he asked Prabhupada, he said, Srila Prabhupada, could you elaborate a little more on Vaibhava and Prabhava? And Prabhupada, he stops for a second and he says, all nonsense, rascals, demons, all nonsense. And I can't remember how the audio went, but when you read it, you can feel the confusion. Everyone's confused. Why is Prabhupada saying all the Vaibhava and Prabhava expansions are all nonsense? And then Prabhupada keeps on going. He says, all they're saying is nonsense, rascaldom. And then Tamal Krishna Goswami, he steps in and he says, Srila Prabhupada, he's asking about the Vaibhava and Prabhava expansions. And Prabhupada began to laugh. He said, oh, I thought he said Baba. I thought he was asking about Meher Baba, and I got so excited I was ready to chastise all this nonsense. I didn't even hear him finish the point. And then he said, you all have Meher Baba, right? And then Prabhupada said, so what's the question? And then he said, Vaibhava and Prabhava expansions. And Prabhupada said, you go read teachings of Lord Chaitanya. Right now I can't remember, but it's all there in the book. He said, I'm the teacher, I can tell you to look it up in the dictionary. So you go to the dictionary and look it up. So it's a sweet pastime, and I always remember it whenever I find any mention of Prabhava or Vaibhava or any of the complexicities of all the avatars and expansions and all of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But in this specific case, we hear about how the Lord expanded these in one specific context. And it's a pastime that's been given a fair bit of attention. This chapter and the previous chapter of Bhagavatam, as we know, this nice sort of summary study, if you will, of Krishna book, of the 10th canto. And most pastimes get a small little mention, but this one gets a decent amount. And we've just come to the end of it. But we'll start from the beginning, because Krishna's pastimes are always sweet. It's nice to be able to say them again and again, and then hopefully it's nice also to hear them again and again. So I hope I don't bore anyone, because you've probably been hearing this pastime a fair few times over the past few days. So it all begins when Bhaumasur, he's stolen some items from the demigods. Now Bhauma, if we can track a bit of Sanskrit, Bhauma means that person who's coming from Bhumi, who's coming from the earth. That's why we have Daivika Klesh. We know there's 3 types of sufferings. Daivika is the one that's caused by the demigods, because that E sort of gets strengthened and becomes I. So in the same way, Bhu gets strengthened into Bhau. Anyways, I can go on for a while about Sanskrit grammar, but everyone will leave. So Bhaumasur means he has come from Bhumi, or for the earth. Because his mother is Bhudevi. And so he steals a few items. He steals Aditi's earrings. So Indra's mother's earrings, it's mentioned. He steals Varuna's umbrella, and he steals the top of Mandara mountain, the playground of the demigods, as Srila Prabhupada renders it. In Bhagavatam we hear, it's described though, even though all these items belong to different individuals, it's described that Bhaumasura stole all of these from Indra. And there's a specific point to be made about that. Because he's stealing from many people, he's not just stealing from Indra. But in general, we have a Vedic principle that when there is a lesser person, all of the recognition is to go to the greater person. So which is why Indra is the one who goes to Dwarka. And which is why, again, it's listed as all things that have been stolen from Indra, even though Indra is not really borrowing Varun's umbrella too often. And we find this principle all the time. I was speaking about Chaitanya Charitamrita earlier. A lot of the actual translations, not the purports, but the actual translations and a lot of the word for words were done by some of Srila Prabhupada's disciples who had learnt Bengali. Prabhupada had engaged them and he had made them do this. We also find in Brahma Samhita, which Srila Prabhupada has quoted in the purport, if you read an older edition of the Brahma Samhita, one that was published in the time of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, you'll find in the introduction, Saraswati Thakur actually says, I would like to thank these 2 of my disciples. I think it was N.K. Sanyal and Bhakti Pradeep Tirtha Maharaj. He was actually the first sannyas disciple of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. He thanks them and he says, thank you so much for the great work you've done, the great seva you've done in helping write these purports and translations. However, on the cover, we write Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Same with Prabhupada's books. Even though Prabhupada engaged his disciples, even in translation work at times, even in purport work, many of Bhagavad Gita as it is, purports had a lot of back and forth in a constructive sense between Hayagriva and Srila Prabhupada. So, but at the end of the day, we write Srila Prabhupada, founder Acharya of ISKCON, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada. That's what's on the front cover, not the list of all the other contributors. Because where do they get the potency to contribute to these books? is not of their own regard. So we can say it's not sometimes people don't like to hear this because they think, oh, well, Prabhupada's cheating them out of their well-due recognition. And in some Prabhupada's books, in the Introduction to Teachings of Lord Chaitanya, Prabhupada actually does. He gives some thanks to his disciples. He thanks, who does he thank again for raising the money? Jayananda, yeah. He thanks Jayananda Thakur. So Prabhupada does give some, but Prabhupada actually doesn't need to. And which is why, again, this principle is there. Because where do his disciples get the potency to help translate Prabhupada's books? Where do they get the potency to help in the assembly of the purports? Same with the disciples of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Of course, that thanksgiving has been removed from the current editions of Brahma Samhita for unfortunate reasons. That's why you have to go to older editions that were published during the lifetime of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. It's a bit of a tangent, but because of the historical politics that we know if we read the Lilamrita that occurred between the different camps after the passing away of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, the camp that was in charge of printing Brahma Samhita was not fans of the translators, so they removed their names from the introduction, and that's the edition that the BBT edition is currently based on. Anyways, that's a little historical tidbit. But yeah, so in general, we find this principle. The lesser, because Varuna is not the king of the demigods, as Indra is, so that's why we can say that all of these things have been stolen from Indra, because this is a Vedic principle. Where there is the lesser, the greater is given the due recognition. So he goes to Dwarka and he starts complaining to Krishna and he says, there's Bhaumasura, he's doing all of these things. And so Krishna, he says, well, of course, I'll help out. This is why I've come. Yada yada hi dharmasya. So he agrees and he goes with Satyabhama on Garuda. Now, some people might ask why he brings Satyabhama, and there's a few reasons given by our acharyas. Firstly, Krishna just thinks, I have to be a good husband. And we see today, it's the responsibility of husbands to make sure that their wives are having a fun time, that they're not bored. So this is the dharma, if you will. Actually, I remember there was a court case in India just recently. A woman filed for divorce. And she filed for divorce for her husband. And of course, in India, it's not like how we have no-fault divorce in the West, where it's like, he looked at me funny. So there we go, divorce papers in the mail. You have to give a reason to the court when you go for a divorce. And her reason was, he doesn't fight with me enough. I'm bored at home. He does everything I ask all the time. He doesn't give me any opportunity to disagree with him. Doesn't give me any opportunity to get angry at him. I want a little spice in my home life. I want to get angry sometimes. I want to fight sometimes. That was the reason she gave to the to the divorce court for getting a divorce. She said, my family life is so boring. Sometimes he'll cook and clean for me. I can't even get upset at him for that. Anything I ask of him, he does for me. This is too boring. How can you expect me to live like this? So anyway, so it's the responsibility of the husband to give some excitement to the wife's life. So Krishna is thinking, I have to give some excitement to her life. I'll take her on a little adventure on Garuda and we'll go off here. Another reason that's given is Krishna previously vowed to Bhumi Devi, that he will never kill any of her children. So we know Bhumi Devi is an expansion of Satyabhama. So because of this, Krishna thinks if I bring her along, she will give me permission, because when she sees the fighting start, she'll just say, end the fighting instantly. She won't want to see me fight for too long, and then I'll have permission to kill a child, again, of Bhu. And then the third reason that's given is that actually, a while ago, we know, famously, Narad Muni, he gave to Rukmini, he gave the famous Parijat flower to Rukmini. He came and gave one as a gift. And then, of course, Satyabhama, she became a little bit jealous. She thought, where's my flower? There's actually a story I was reading that reminded me of this principle, because this is actually a common thing we'll find. If you read in the life of Hazrat Muhammad, if you read in the hadiths, there's recorded. The hadiths are generally considered the most accurate accounts of his life. You'll find two different categories. There's hadith and there's seerah. Seerah came later on. It's all like local traditions. But hadiths, they put a lot of effort into making sure they're valid. They put a lot of historical effort in. So there's one hadith of the Hazrat Muhammad. And Hazrat Muhammad, as we know, he had 4 wives. And so one of his wives, she made this very nice honey tea. And it was really good. It's described. Hazrat Muhammad, he would always go to his wife and he would always drink the honey tea and he would love it. He would be relishing it and relishing it and relishing it. So much so that we know the Vedic principle is if you have polygamy, you marry multiple wives, you have to treat all of them equally. It's also the same in Islamic culture. You have to treat all of your wives equally if you are to have polygamy. So, Hazrat Muhammad, at one point he started treating maybe this wife a little unequally. He would always go, and so the other wives of Hazrat Muhammad, they all came together and they said, hey, we love this co-wife of ours. We love it to bits. But this is a bit of a problem now. We're not getting enough attention. Always, Muhammad, he's going and he's drinking this honey tea. Where's our attention? So they came up with a little plan. And the next time, when they ran into Muhammad, after he drank some of the honey tea, they said, oh, husband, how are you? And he came forth to give them a hug. They took a step back. And he looked at them confused because normally they're so affectionate to him. And he said, what's wrong? And they said, oh, nothing. And then Hazrat Muhammad, he was thinking, oh, there must be some problem. And he goes again to give them a hug. And then they take another step back. And he says, okay, you can't hide this from me. What's the problem? And they said, oh, we don't want to tell you, but your breath, it smells a little. And then Hazrat Muhammad, he says, oh, why would my breath smell? And they said, oh, we don't know. Maybe you drank something earlier. Maybe you drank a certain something that made your breath smell. And then Hazrat Muhammad, he said, oh, of course, it must be that honey tea. So from then on, he never drank that honey tea ever again. And they all achieved their goal. So we can see this is a basic psychological thing that happens. There's some, especially in polygamous get-ups, which are not so common these days, there's always that balancing of maintaining attention among all of the wives. But Krishna, he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. At this point, he's not having too many wives, and he's about to have many, many more at the end of this pastime. And as we've heard in the purport in the text, Prabhupada writes that Krishna, he pleases all of them equally. So Krishna is not struggling. He's not having any of these sort of honey tea incidents. So when he can tell that there is some jealousy occurring, he says, why just one flower? Don't worry, we'll get you a whole tree. So anyway, so like this, they fly off to Pragyotishapur, all the way up. So they're flying off and they're going up, up, up. And then they arrive there, and Prabhupada writes, this place is so well fortified, even modern technology would struggle to get in. But Krishna, it's no problem. So Krishna, he grabs his club and he smashes away the rock formations. He grabs with his arrows, he destroys all of the weapons that are defending it. With his disc, there's big walls of fire and all these other elements, water, wind. With his disc, his chakra, he just launches it out and dissolves all of the walls. And then with his sword, he breaks up these these cables, these chain, dangerous Murapasha cables. So he chops them all up. No struggle. And then with his conch, Panchajanya. There's a few different accounts that people give how Krishna got Panchajanya. But in general, I found the standard one is that when Krishna went for Dakshina, for his spiritual master, he went and retrieved, obviously, his spiritual master's son from the afterlife. And on his way, though, he encountered this great sea demon named Panchajanya. And then after killing it, he took one of its limbs, and that was the conch. And then we know afterwards he went to the underworld itself, the afterlife. And when he went there, he actually blew that conch. It's described. And in that planet, the trees actually, they have leaves like razor blades. They're very sharp. But it said when Krishna blew Panchajanya just once, all of those leaves fell down and soft leaves came in their place. All of the demons there stopped the torture they were doing. And in fact, every single living entity on that planet attained liberation. So we know Panchajanya is a great thing. And we know also in Bhagavad Gita, the moment Krishna, he blows the conch, victory is guaranteed. What hope do the Kauravas have? So it achieves a very similar effect here. There's all of these mystic seals protecting the fortress, and all of them get destroyed by the playing of Panchajanya. But not just that, but there's actually mystic seals that some demons would put on their heart to protect them. Because demons are demonic. They're not filled with those wonderful qualities of bravery and everything. So they need a bit of, it reminds me of how in World War II, the Nazi soldiers, they would give them methamphetamine, in order to make them brave to fight. So a little bit like that, they had these seals on their heart to stop them being afraid. But so not only the seals that were protecting the fortress, but also the seals that were protecting the hearts of all of these demons were broken by the playing of the conch shell. And then because of that, naturally, fear set in. So not only were all of the fortifications of the fortress destroyed, not only were all the fortifications of the hearts destroyed, but the hearts themselves were shattered by the transcendental playing of this conch shell. So like this, then Krishna, he comes in, and he's all going. But with the sounding of this conch shell, which sounds like the thunder at the end, the Mahapralaya. The word that's used for the thunder or the lightning of this conch shell is ashani. Ashani, that's the word that's used to describe this. This is the same word that's used in Bhagavatam to describe Krishna when he's in wrestling with in Kamsa's arena. When all the wrestlers saw Krishna and they saw this lightning bolt, what did they see? They saw Ashani. So again, we're finding this motif. If we want, this is a literary technique. It's bringing back the great military ability of Krishna. When he's playing this, it sounds like that very image he was, killing all those wrestlers. So like this, he plays it. And then Mura, out he comes, this giant 5-headed demon, and he roars. And he's there, effulgent, but not a very pleasant effulgence. This very ugly effulgence. And he's glowing and glowing like the sun at the end of the millennium. And he's glowing, and his roar can be heard. It's shaking the egg, the cosmic egg, the walls of this universe. It's being shook. Anyways, so he tries his best. He launches his trident, but Krishna just shoots arrows, shoots 2 arrows, slices it up into 3 pieces, and then keeps on shooting into his face. But what to do? Mura got very angry. With all of these arrows in his face, you wouldn't be too happy. So he throws his club at Krishna, and Krishna again, just easy, destroys the club into 1,000 pieces. So this pastime keeps on going. Krishna then, he completely just decapitates the demon, no struggle. And then of course, all of the sons come out, and all the sons, again, there's lots of fighting. It's pretty cool, actually. I always like reading that chapter of Krishna book. All the fighting continues. Krishna, he goes, he kills all of them, kills all of the 7 sons. I've forgotten their names now, Shravan and a few others, Shravan and co. They're all done away with. And so Krishna, he just keeps on going. And then Krishna, he's sitting on Garuda with Satyabhama, like a cloud with its lightning bolt atop the sun. And then suddenly now, Bhaumasur, he's had enough. He's completely offended. How dare Krishna kill some demons? The audacity of him. So then Bhaumasur, he comes out as well. And he goes and he launches his weapon, and all of his army launches their weapons as well. And what Krishna does is Krishna, he first reduces all of the army into a pile of limbs. He shoots all his arrows and he kills all of them. All of their limbs are off, their arms, their legs, they're all just a pile of that. And then he destroys their weapons. So this is Krishna. Krishna killed the thrower of the weapon first. Krishna was having such a relaxed time. He was happy to wait for the weapon to reach him. He had all the time in the world. Normally somebody deflects the weapon and then kills the person. But Krishna, he's having a relaxed, fun time. He's just playing, actually. These are leelas. This is just a game to Krishna. So Krishna, he decides, I'll mix things up. First I'll kill them, and then I'll destroy their weapons. And then with 3 arrows each, he would destroy each one of the weapons. Not like we see, in the Mahabharata TV show. They shoot 1 arrow, and then it becomes 3 arrows, and then it becomes 5 arrows, and then, it becomes 6 arrows. Actually, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, at least in this instance, it meant that Krishna shot one after the other really quickly. That's what it means by 3 arrows being fired. So like this, Krishna, he's firing and firing and firing. And then at this point, what does his wife say? She says, okay, kill the demon. Kill him before he can even throw his weapon. So now Krishna, that's the only reason he's been waiting this whole time. He's just been waiting for permission, and then boom, launches his chakra, heads off, falls on the ground, and it's glowing. So like this, we hear the demon is being killed. And all of the demigods, what are they saying? Ha ha, ha ha, ha ha, which means alas, alas. It sounds like laughing in English, but in Sanskrit it means, oh no, oh no. In Sanskrit it's haheti. Haheti sadhveti. Haheti sadviti. Haheti sadviti, that's what they say. Iti in Sanskrit is just like the quotation marks. It means they said. Iti. So haha iti, sadhu iti. So sadhu, we say when there's something auspicious. That means, what a good job. And haha means, oh no. Now some people read this and they think, oh, see, even the demigods had a bit of heart. They were sad that this demon was killed. But actually it meant, they were complaining. Why did such a demonic person have to inhabit the earth at all? Why does the world have to be impurified by such a demonic presence? Now, there's a point that I think is really unique about this. Because when Krishna is fighting, he's not struggling. We know that the demon, Bhaumasura, he launches his spear at Garuda. And when it hits Garuda, Garuda doesn't even care. Garuda, it's like a garland on him. This is not how we see fighting normally. Even when we find the demigods fighting in Bhagavatam, we know the pastime of Vritrasura and Indra. Indra, he's struggling, and that's not a play struggle. He's really struggling. He needs a little pep talk from Vritrasura. You can do it. He encourages him, a little motivational speech. That's what Indra needs. Indra, the king of the demigods, he's struggling. But Krishna, he's not struggling. Krishna's having a fun time. I went to an Easter service once at St. Mary's Cathedral. It was actually really beautiful. It's very traditional. They have these wonderful choirs and all singing. It was very, very pretty. Actually, and I was reflecting, it's probably why my age is the age of the most, my age group is the age group of the most deviations and all, because I was thinking, we're not in Vedic times, right? So age-wise, I'm in the brahmachari age. But practically, I'm not. If you're not in an ashram, you're not really executing what a brahmacharya is. So you're in this weird sort of thing. You're a white-wearing brahmachari, so to speak. You're a grihastha brahmachari hybrid. But it's a very dangerous combination because you've got all the freedom of a grihastha without any of the responsibility that's meant to make you not act upon it. So, I mean, to be fair, I was using my freedom to go to a church, so it wasn't that bad. But I was just thinking, I have a lot of freedom, I can do whatever I want. So that's probably why it's a little volatile. And that's probably why Vedic times, it's so important, Srila Prabhupada stressed, we should really reintroduce Varnashram. Because I thought, this is probably realistically a waste of time. But I could be doing a whole lot worse than wasting my time with all of the freedom that I have. Anyways, but I went to the church service and they were speaking, and it was very nice, and it reminded me of a very famous saying by one Catholic thinker. And he was saying, what is the difference between God and all of the Greek gods, all of the pagan gods, so to speak, all of the demigods? What is the difference between God and Zeus? And we can also say, what is the difference between God and Indra? What is the difference between God and Varahadev? What is the difference between God and Yamaraj? What is the difference? The main difference is that God is not in competition with his creation. God is not in competition. The demigods, they're always in competition. They're always having ego games, and they're always struggling. They're always fighting with the demons. There's a genuine competition. But Krishna, he is not in competition with his creation. Krishna, he is celebrating his creation. Krishna is just having fun. Krishna does never struggles in his pastimes. I mean, he does in Vraj, but that's a separate, that's rasa prachar, not tattva prachar. So, Krishna, God, he never struggles. Even though he's fighting purely for fun. There was no anxiety in Krishna. There was no struggle in Krishna, because Krishna is not in competition with the demons. Krishna is not in competition with anyone besides his devotees. Krishna, he is not in competition at all. He is not threatened. Demigods are threatened. Demigods stress. Humans are threatened. Humans stress. But Krishna does not. That's why Krishna's pastimes, they take this very unique character. Krishna, he's not struggling at all. I'll kill the people who threw the weapons and then I'll destroy the weapons. Easy. And of course the devotee of the Lord, hearing Bhagavad Katha, meaning hearing the Katha of the devotees of the Lord, is equal to hearing Krishna Katha, hearing the Katha of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Because practically the pure devotees, the great devotees, they share all the qualities of Krishna. They don't have them necessarily from within themselves, but they share them. And because of that, the same benefit one gets from hearing of the glories of the devotee. One gets the same benefits of hearing the glories of Krishna as they do from hearing the glories of the devotee. Like this. So in the same way, the pastimes of the devotee are as glorious as Krishna. So also the pastimes. There's no struggle for Garuda. It's a garland, the spear. Again, God is not in competition with his creation. This is what defines it. God is playing with his creation. He's having fun. And again, this is why Deva. The word Deva in Sanskrit, it means that personality who relishes pastimes. That personality who relishes activities. So we'll have many Devas, maybe the demigods, to a degree they relish this. But who is the greatest Deva? Who is the greatest Lord? It's Krishna. Because Krishna is so wonderfully relishing all these pastimes. Again, Krishna is not struggling as he is fighting all of these demons. So then, this keeps on going. And also, all of the sons, in Bhagavatam it says they went to Yama. They went to Yama. So in our Bhagavatam translations, it says they went to the court of Yamaraj. They went to damnation. But actually, this doesn't line up with what we know about Krishna. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur actually clarifies that when he says they went to Yama, it actually meant they attained liberation. Because sometimes going to Yama means going to Yamaraj. Other times it means going to the destination of the process that begins with Yama and also has Niyama. So we can find the two meanings. And of course, the process with Yama and Niyama is Ashtanga Yoga, so they attain some impersonal liberation. Okay. So he continued going, and then of course, in front of him appears Bhumi. And Bhumi, she begins to pray. Oh, Supreme Personality of Godhead. Oh, Paramatma. Why does she say Paramatma? Well, she says Paramatma because she says, look, my son just tried to kill you. I swear I don't want to kill you. Saying Paramatma because you're in my heart. You know that I'm sincere. You know that I'm not trying to kill you. You know that I only have good wishes. Please don't kill me. So what Bhumi saw as a great shelter should also be a shelter of us, but should also be a little scary for us. So often people try and trick Krishna. They want to trick themselves even. But Krishna is Paramatma. He knows your own intentions, your own desires better than you do. So many people will come to the Lord with all sorts of desires, and Krishna is often very, very happy to reciprocate. But that is a somewhat of a dangerous thing. Because what sort of desires we can bring. People think they can trick Krishna. I'll say these few words. People will think, as long as I do, then it's prasadam. They'll think that, I've tricked Krishna. I just looked at that whole bhoga offering and I just wanted to eat it. But Krishna, no, I clapped. I rung the bell. I tricked Krishna. Krishna doesn't know. He's not unto me. We'll chant sometimes. We'll sit down and chant, and then we'll think about all sorts of other things. Oh, but that's all right. My mouth's moving. Krishna won't know. But Krishna does know. Paramatma. So this is the shelter for Bhumi Devi because she's very sincere in her heart. But we should also take it as of course, how can we control it? We must be purified, and then we can have a pure heart. But we shouldn't fall into this false sense of security. What is security for Bhumi Devi is definitely not security for us. It is motivation for us to purify ourselves. Of course, sometimes Krishna doesn't reciprocate out of his mercy. Sometimes God doesn't. Again, I've been thinking about St. Augustine because it was just Easter, so Christian stuff's all around the world. And St. Augustine is very famous. He's one of the most famous saints in the Christian world. In terms of impact, he's as impactful as Jesus himself. Augustine is very, very, very impactful in Christian history. And Augustine, when he was young, is known to be a rascal, a complete rascal. He has a very famous story where he goes and he steals fruit from his neighbor. And then he says, I was rich. I had no reason to steal fruit. I just did it because I wanted to. And so he makes this really long, beautiful point about the conditioned nature of jivas. He says it's just our nature to lust after things, to just enjoy, to take and take and take and take, even if we don't need it. This is the basic nature of the conditioned soul. So he makes that point from his own life. And it's actually really interesting, because even though his book, his autobiography, which he wrote, is now maybe 2,000 years old, he still writes things that we hear today. He says, my parents, they just wanted me to get a good job. They didn't care about my spiritual life. He says all sorts of things like this. Anyways, but St. Augustine, he's very famous for praying, "Oh God, give me celibacy, give me chastity, but not yet. Give it to me a little bit later. Let me enjoy my sinful life a little bit longer. And then after a while, then let me become a great devotee." Thankfully, God didn't listen to that prayer, and St. Augustine went on to become a great saint. Anyway, so sometimes Krishna does not reciprocate. So, "O Paramatma," she prays. And then she gives her grandson, she says, his father's just been killed. "My dear grandson Bhagadatta, please take care of him. He has no one to take care of him now. Please take care of him. Please give him some shelter, drive away his fear." Anyways, so the pastime goes on for a while. The prayers are very long. I won't go into them too long. So then afterwards, Krishna, he brings all of these queens home, because what can you do with them? They've been defiled, so to speak. They've been taken by another man. By Vedic standards, they can't be married to anyone. Who's going to protect them? What's going to happen? Now, Krishna wouldn't have married them if that was the only reason. Krishna is merciful, but he's not that merciful. He has standards, so to speak. You can't just enter into Krishna's pastimes. You can't just enter into the heart of Krishna just stumbling in, "Oh, Krishna, I really need you to look after me." No. The reason why Krishna does then choose, otherwise Krishna could have married them off to someone else. The reason why Krishna personally marries them is the moment that Krishna barges in, the moment that he barges in, they all see him and they all see what a beautiful personality. And with complete purity in their heart, they desire to have him as their husband. Again, it is Krishna is not obliged to marry anyone, and Krishna is not obliged to create any devotional relationship with anyone. Krishna is under no obligation. But by their devotion, Krishna had some impetus. Krishna had some desire to. Krishna only goes where there is rasa, where there is devotion. And because there was devotion there, Krishna, he went there. Now we'll find in this text today, what does Srila Prabhupada say? What does Shukadev Goswami say? He accepted their hands in perfect rituals. Technically, it should have been imperfect rituals. These women were no longer pure. Don't want to get into the details of Vedic marriage. This is not exactly PG, but in the Vedic standards for what is pure is very, very high. Very, very high. So Vedic marriages in the West, 9 out of 10 of them are bogus, because you're using rituals that can't actually be applied. The principles of chastity have been violated in almost every single case, unfortunately. So, in this way, technically the ritual should be done imperfectly. Most of the yajnas actually shouldn't be performed because they presuppose the purity and chastity of the wife. However, here we have an example of women who are definitely not in a pure state. Now, they're definitely much more pure than the average person who gets married today. I don't want to overstate my case. But still, they were definitely in an impure state. But why then were they given perfect rituals? The reason why is by Krishna's internal potency. Now, even though this text right now is saying it, meaning this is how Krishna married them all in the different spots, it also means the internal potency of Krishna is bhakti. Bhakti is that internal potency of Krishna. Because of their devotion, they overcame their material imperfections. That's why Srila Prabhupada is valid if he wants to perform full Vedic marriages for his disciples. We know many of his disciples came from very impure backgrounds. No standard of purity is being upheld there. Even mlecha standards of purity have been broken. But still, they're fully pure, because by the devotional principle, all of these things can be overcome. Now, that's not to say we can freely abuse that. I'm a devotee, so I'll eat grains on Ekadashi. I'm a devotee, so I'll do much worse than eating grains on Ekadashi. This is not a principle to be abused, because being a devotee is not so cheap. When Srila Prabhupada was leaving his body, his disciples said, "Srila Prabhupada, as Vaishnavas, how should we perform the funerary rites?" And Srila Prabhupada, he said, "As Vaishnavas, we are not Vaishnavas. We are trying to be Vaishnavas. Do not think that being a devotee is so cheap." So it's not a principle to be abused. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur at one point says, to be a Vaishnav means you're on the platform of Prema Bhakti. So even some Uttama Adhikaris, are not Vaishnavas by that standard. Again, different standards, different times. We can't take that as a hard and fast rule. But that's the point. We cannot abuse this principle. But this principle is there, even if we are not meant to abuse it. So this is why perfect rituals were performed. And then so we know thousands of wives now. 1,100 wives Krishna marries. And then he gets his 1,108, a very auspicious number. So he marries his 1,100 wives, and people hear stories like this and they think, well, that's just mythological, isn't it? How can you marry 1,100 wives? Even if you're saying it's about God, come on, get over yourself. That's not really possible, is it? 1,100 wives? How are they going to get all of the people to perform the sacrifices? Where are they going to get all the materials? How are all this going to be performed? Well, it gets even worse. Later on in Bhagavatam, we hear that the Tisra Kotya Sahasranam Ashtashiti Satanicha. This says the amount of teachers that the Yadus employed for their children were 38,800,000. 38 million teachers they had. If that sounds bad, then you keep on going forward. The next text says, Lakshenastesa aha kuho. 30 trillion attendants were there for Maharaj Ugrasena. If that sounds a little intense, Srila Prabhupada, when rendering that text, what does he say? He doesn't say 30 trillion. He says 10 quadrillion soldiers were in the private army of Ugrasena. If that sounds intense, then so that number, 30 trillion, that's 3 with 13 zeros, I think it is. But forget 13 zeros. The amount of young calves, not cows, calves, not the big cows, only just the young cows, in Vraj, is 1 with 17 zeros after it. I don't even know. When we don't even have names for the numbers, then you know the numbers are getting big. So this is the number that's listed. This is very, very big. How can we believe this? Surely this is an exaggeration. Surely they're exaggerating just to make a point. Do you think it's exaggeration? Yeah. You would think that. It would make sense. Oh, they're exaggerating the number. But what does Srila Prabhupada write in Krishna book? Right after these marriages happen, Srila Prabhupada says, there is no exaggeration. Sorry, I tricked you into saying yes, but there is no exaggeration in these pastimes of Srimad Bhagavatam. There is no exaggeration. And all of our acharyas have said the same thing. These numbers are precise. Now some devotees, they want to come with their modern mindset. I find online many devotees, they try to, with their clever Sanskrit arguments, they want to say, actually this number is maybe more like he had 1,000 bodyguards or something like this. But no, this is not what our acharyas have taught us. We humbly accept the explanation of our acharyas, and we humbly accept the explanation of Srila Prabhupada. These numbers are literal. But what then do we do? Just to give you an idea, 10 quadrillion bodyguards alone, 10 quadrillion, that's over 100,000 times the population of Earth right now. That's a huge number. That's just the soldiers. What about their wives? What about their children? I mean, I remember one devotee once said, how did they go to the bathroom? Like, that would have been a nightmare. 10 quadrillion. So how do we understand this? How do we understand the pastimes of the Lord? There's one text that's really wonderfully used by Jiva Goswami. And in this text, we will be able to understand this concept, and then we will conclude the class. And in it, it's from the Skanda Purana. And in it, it's said that in Mathura, one may be able to count every single particle of dust in this universe at one point. At one point, if one gives their whole life, they might be able to go and count each and every particle of dust. That's a long project, right? Counting every particle of dust in this temple room, especially before, like it's, I was actually reflecting on this text when we were cleaning up on the roof earlier, the ceiling. It was, when you cleaned one half, it was like white, and the other half was like black. I was thinking, how many particles of dust are being caught up here? And I was thinking, so many particles of dust just on that ceiling. But this text says, if one eventually might be able to count all of the particles of dust in this universe, if they had enough time, they would be able to, maybe. Maybe. But even after having accounted every particle of dust in the universe, one will never, ever be able to count the amount of dhams that are present in Mathura. In Mathura itself, there are more dhams present within that city, so to speak, than there are particles of dust in this universe. And so much more that even if one could make it possible to count all of the particles of dust in this universe, even with such ability in counting, still they would be totally unable to count how much spiritual potency, how much is present in the Dham of Mathura. Elsewhere we hear, just in one corner of Raj, 1 billion universes can be fit. So, very inconceivable, very difficult. How do we understand this then? We understand this as Svamayaya, through the internal potency of the Lord. We understand this because, why? Krishna is not in competition with his creation. Krishna, he is not competing with his creation. He is not playing by the rules of his creation. He is not doing any of these things. Krishna is playing by his own rules. And whatever makes the pastime more splendid, whatever makes it more wonderful, whatever makes him have more fun, he doesn't need to care about rules of physics, rules of logic. He plays by his own rules. He is not in competition with his creation or any of the created beings he has created. Krishna, he is not in competition. If it is beautiful, if it is fun, if it is exciting, if it allows his pastimes to be something we can enjoy hearing, then Krishna allows it. Or rather, why does Krishna need to allow it? Krishna defines what is allowed. So all of these things, Krishna does all of these things. These are his pastimes, which is why sometimes people will say, well, in Bhagavatam it says this historical story. Where's your historical evidence? Where's your manuscript? Where's your pottery? Where's all of the coins? Where's the evidence that Dwarka existed? But this is not the way we read Bhagavatam. Yes, Bhagavatam is historically accurate. Don't get me wrong. I'll debate you on it if you want. Bhagavatam is historically accurate, but that's not why Bhagavatam was written. That's not the mood that Bhagavatam was written in. Bhagavatam is not meant to be relished as a book of history. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur told his disciples not really to relish Bhakti Ratnakar, because he said it is just an encyclopedia. Bhagavatam is not an encyclopedia. It is a book of pastime, of rasa. It is a book where there is history, but it is history told with emotion, with story. History does not deal with the beauty of metaphors. History does not deal with beautiful imagery. History deals with hard facts. Bhagavatam is not concerned with hard facts. Bhagavatam uses hard facts in order to tell the story, the pastime of God. And that pastime, that story, the story of Krishna, does not need to play with any rules. Because again, Krishna is not in competition with his creation. So whatever he wants to happen, happens. Not because somehow we have to argue that it's logically possible, but because it's beautiful. And because of the beauty of Krishna's pastimes, that is the highest rule of the universe, not physics or logic. And if he wants it to happen, well then it'll happen. Grantharaj Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Ananta Koti Vaishnav Vrinda ki. Sorry to keep you on, my classes always go over time.